You are not resenting your past decisions. You are resenting the story your brain keeps generating to punish the version of you that made them. And if you do not catch the mechanism, you will keep losing years arguing with a person who does not exist anymore. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our next subscriber milestone, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who actually want psychology with teeth. If this hits you, tap like too, because that tiny signal tells the algorithm. This is worth showing to someone else who is quietly stuck in the same loop. Now, if you have ever replayed a moment and thought, I ruined everything, I should have known, I cannot believe I did that, I want you to notice something. That feeling is not just regret. It is a specific cognitive process. Your current self is using upgraded information to prosecute your past self under rules that did not exist at the time. That sounds obvious until you see what is actually happening under the hood. Because once you see it, resentment stops being a moral emotion and starts being a system error. Most people talk about forgiving yourself. I am not against forgiveness. It is just not the lever that moves this. The lever is correcting a distortion your brain is incentivized to keep. Here is the first insight that changes the whole game. Resentment about the past is often a status protection behavior disguised as self-criticism. Think about this for a second. Why would a mind attack itself? Evolutionarily, that sounds stupid, but the mind does not care about your happiness. It cares about keeping you inside the tribe, avoiding humiliation, and predicting danger. When you look back and feel resentment, what you are often doing is performing loyalty to a standard. You are saying, I am the kind of person who would never do that. I am not like that. Look, even I hate that version of me. It is a kind of internal public relations campaign. Notice the pattern here. The harsher your self-judgment, the more you feel like you have proven you understand the rules now. It is not repentance. It is reputation management, except the audience is partly imaginary and partly internalized. You can see this in real life. Someone cheats, lies, picks the wrong career, stays too long in a relationship, ignores a red flag, wastes money, burns a friendship. Years later, they obsess. And when you listen carefully, the pain is not just about the outcome, it is about what the decision implies about who they were. Weak, naive, desperate, stupid, easy to manipulate. The resentment is aimed at the identity label, not the event. The mechanism behind this is something like an internal dominance hierarchy. Your current self wants to be higher status than your past self. So it creates a courtroom where it is the judge, it has all the evidence, and it gets to feel superior. That superiority feels like safety, because if you can look down on that past version, you can believe it will never happen again. But here is the catch. When you build safety through contempt, you have to keep the contempt alive, which means you have to keep the past decision emotionally radioactive. So the resentment becomes self-perpetuating. Now here is where it gets interesting. If you try to simply stop thinking about it, the mind resists, because it thinks the contempt is preventing future danger. So you need a different move. You need to show your brain a better way to create future safety. Second insight, the reason your past decisions feel unforgivable is because your brain has confused memory with simulation. Most people think memory is a recording. It is not. Memory is reconstruction. Every time you remember a decision, you are not retrieving it. You are rebuilding it with your current beliefs, current knowledge, and current emotional state. That is not poetic. That is how the system works. The hippocampus and related networks reassemble fragments, and then your prefrontal cortex narrates it into a coherent story. So when you remember your past, you are also editing it. Let me show you what I mean. You remember being in that relationship, and you think, how did I not see it? but you are remembering the beginning with information from the ending. You are importing the final chapter into chapter 1. That is called hindsight bias, but the deeper issue is more brutal. Hindsight bias does not just change your interpretation, it changes the felt reality of what you think you perceived back then. Your brain runs a simulation. If I were there now, I would choose differently. And then it quietly swaps that simulated competence onto the actual past self and concludes, therefore I should have chosen differently. That is the error. You are holding your past self responsible for an ability that had not been built yet. This is the same bug you see in machine learning systems when you test a model on data that leaked from the future. The model looks brilliant, then fails in the real world. You are doing temporal data leakage on your own identity, and because the simulation feels vivid, you think it is truth. You feel certain. That certainty is what fuels resentment, not facts. Certainty. Here is a practical way to catch it. Ask yourself, what did I not know yet, that I know now, that my brain is pretending I knew then? Name it. Specific facts, specific emotional skills, specific boundaries, specific financial literacy, specific attachment patterns. Most people cannot name it because naming it would collapse the fantasy that they were fully equipped and simply chose badly. And that fantasy is weirdly comforting because it implies you had control. It implies the world is predictable if you are smart enough. Stay with me because the next part sounds almost offensive, but it is the turning point. Third insight, resentment is often grief that has been converted into blame because blame feels more controllable than loss. When something is truly gone, time, youth, a partner, an opportunity, a version of your health, a chance at a different life, grief shows up. Grief is disorienting. It has no action step. It makes you small. It forces you to admit that even perfect choices cannot guarantee perfect outcomes. So the mind offers you a trade. Instead of grief, you can have blame. And if you can blame someone, even yourself, you can keep the illusion that the loss was preventable. That illusion hurts, but it is structured. It gives you a villain. It gives you a lever. It gives you a story. This is why some people would rather hate themselves than accept that life had randomness in it. Self-hate is a way to keep causality tidy. If it was my fault, then the universe is fair. If it wasn't fully my fault, then reality is chaotic. Many minds prefer guilt to chaos. Now watch what happens when you apply that to your past. You are not just mad at the decision. You are mad at the irreversibility. You are mad that you cannot go back. And because you cannot fight time, you fight the person who made the decision. You fight past you. So if you want to stop resenting your past decisions, you do not start by saying, I forgive myself. That is often too abstract to land. You start by asking, what exactly am I grieving that I have been translating into prosecution? Is it years? Is it a version of yourself you wanted to be? Is it innocence? Is it trust? Is it money? Is it the sense that you had a clean story? Name the loss. Because resentment thrives in vagueness. Grief becomes metabolizable when it becomes specific. Now, before you think this is all emotional, there is a fourth layer that most people miss, and it is the most technical part. It is also the part that will make you feel less crazy. Your mind keeps a prediction ledger. This is the midpoint shift, so flip everything I just said and look at it from the brain's perspective. Your brain is a prediction machine. It does not primarily want you to be happy. It wants to reduce prediction error. When you make a decision and it ends badly, your brain experiences a spike in prediction error. The world did not match the model. That is dangerous. So the brain tries to update the model, but updating is hard because the real world is complex and ambiguous. So it looks for a simpler update, Mark that decision as contaminated. Brand it with emotional pain so you avoid similar patterns. Resentment is one of the emotional tags the brain uses to label a pattern as dangerous. It is like a bright warning sticker on an old file. Do not repeat. That sounds useful until you realize the brain is not great at defining what the actual pattern was. It often chooses the wrong feature to label. You think the lesson is, I should never trust anyone, or I should never take risks, or I should never be vulnerable, or I should have known immediately. Those are not lessons. Those are trauma-inspired overgeneralizations. And when your brain overgeneralizes, it has to keep resentment alive to maintain the avoidance. Which means resentment is sometimes not about the past at all. It is about controlling your future by shrinking it. Now here is the unifying question that cuts through all of this. Is your resentment teaching precision or teaching avoidance? If it is teaching precision, it will produce specific, testable rules. If it is teaching avoidance, it will produce global identity attacks. I was stupid. I cannot trust myself. I ruin everything. Those are not lessons. Those are cages. So let us turn this into something you can use. I call it the 3-file system because your mind is treating your past like one messy folder labeled evidence that I am defective. We are going to split it into 3 different files that your brain can actually process without needing resentment. File 1 is the information file. This is what you genuinely did not know and could not have known at the time. Not what you wish you knew, what you did not have access to, other people's hidden intentions, economic shifts, your undeveloped skill, your unrecognized pattern, your unhealed wound. If you put something in this file, the emotional tone should be sober, not punishing. It is data.file2 is the incentive file. This is the part almost nobody wants to look at. What were you getting from the decision in the moment? Not morally, mechanically. Were you buying belonging, relief, approval, certainty, numbness, a sense of identity, a delay of a hard conversation, a chance to feel chosen? Incentives are not excuses. They are the actual causal engine. If you skip this file, you will repeat the pattern with different costumes. And file 3 is the skill file. This is what you needed to be able to do that you could not do yet. Set boundaries. Tolerate loneliness. Ask better questions. Delay gratification. Regulate anxiety. Leave when you see the first signal. If you convert resentment into skills, your brain finally gets what it wanted. Future safety. And it no longer needs the contempt. Now let me make this concrete. Imagine you stayed in a relationship that was clearly wrong. Your resentment says, I was pathetic. The 3-file system says, information. I did not know how manipulative patterns escalate, and I could not see the whole arc. Incentive. I was getting relief from loneliness and a story that I was finally chosen. Skill. I needed boundary setting and the ability to tolerate someone being disappointed in me. Notice what just happened. There is nothing vague to attack anymore. The mind stops shadowboxing with an identity label and starts updating a model. But there is still one more problem. Even after you do this, you might still feel the sting. And that is because there is a social layer. Your past decisions live inside what I call your imagined witness. You are not only judging yourself, you are prejudging how you would be judged if the full story were public. Even if nobody knows, your nervous system acts like somebody knows. That is shame. Shame is not guilt about an action. Shame is threat about rank. So here is a move that sounds simple but is psychologically surgical. You practice telling the story with adult framing, not defensive framing. Defensive framing sounds like, I cannot believe I did that. I was so dumb. Adult framing sounds like, I made the best decision I could with the model I had. The model was incomplete. Here is how it was incomplete. Here is the cost. Here is the update. The point is not to sound nice. The point is to remove the status theatre, because status theatre keeps you stuck in performance. Adult framing puts you back into learning. Now we can synthesize everything into one ultimate insight. You stop resenting your past decisions when you stop using the past to negotiate your identity in the present. That is the pattern behind the patterns. Resentment is an identity negotiation. You are trying to prove, to yourself or to an invisible jury, that you are competent now, and the price you pay is that you keep your past self on the stand forever. So here is the framework I want you to actually use the next time the loop starts, and I mean the next time, not someday. Step 1. Catch the courtroom language. Words like should have, how could I cannot believe, what is wrong with me. That is status protection and temporal data leakage. Name it. Step 2. Ask one question that forces precision. What is the smallest, most specific lesson here that would actually change my next decision? If you cannot state it in one sentence, you are not learning, you are punishing. Step 3. Run the 3-file system quickly. Information, incentive, skill. You can do it in 2 minutes on a note app. The goal is to give your brain an updated model so it does not need the resentment tag. Step 4. Pay the grief. This is the part nobody wants. Say, out loud if you can, what you lost. I lost time. I lost a version of my life. I lost trust. And then you pause. Not to dramatize it. To let the nervous system register reality without converting it into blame. And step 5, the final step, is the quietest one. You stop demanding that your past self be the kind of person your present self has become. That demand is secretly narcissistic. It is the belief that you should have always been fully formed. Now come back to the opening line. You are not resenting your past decisions. You are resenting the story your brain uses to feel safe and superior at the same time. When you replace that story with a learning model, resentment becomes unnecessary. If this changed how you see your own past, I would genuinely like to hear one decision you still replay, and which of the 3 files it actually belongs in. Because the moment you categorize it correctly, you stop being haunted by it. And here is the question I will leave you with. If your past self was not your enemy, but your raw material, what would you build out of what happened instead of a prison?